because sometimes our lives are so locked up and blocked up and built up. We've built up all these barriers, and through hate and unforgiveness and prejudice and all these types of things that just destroy us. And we try to get out of it ourselves. We can't. It's locked up. And it's going to take a spiritual key to unlock that. So we got to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto us. Psalm 77:11-12 says, I will remember the works of the Lord. Surely I will remember thy wonders of old. I will meditate also of all thy works and talk of thy doing. As we talk of the works of God, we remember them, we rehearse them, and those keys are when we remember what the Lord has done. And those keys, as we put in that lock and we remember what the Lord has done through his son Jesus, those locks become open and we are free. We are free because we cast all of that garbage at the feet of Jesus, and we are free, and we can bind the enemy, and we can loose the power of God upon our lives through the blood of Jesus Christ, through the price that has already been paid for us. Brothers and sisters, you don't have to be tired. You don't have to be tied down, worn down, strapped down. You can be free and set free through the power of the cross. You just need to understand that God has given us keys, and we could walk up out of that mess. But you got to know there's a way out of your mess, and it's JESUS. Praise the Lord.
Where can you buy a brand new Nissan with a lifetime warranty? Kingston Pike. Hey, folks, Gerald Anderson with Ted Russell Nissan. You heard it right. Every new Ted Russell Nissan comes with a lifetime warranty, and that's a long, long time. Ted Russell Nissan on Kingston Pike.
Good morning and welcome to AM 1380 WYSH and Ask Your Neighbor. Ask Your Neighbor can also be heard and seen on our website, WYSHradio.com. And if you are in Anderson, Rome, or Morgan County and have Comcast cable, you can watch Ask Your Neighbor on BBB TV Channel 12. Ask Your Neighbor is the program where you call in and do just that. Ask Your Neighbor. Do you have a comment? Do you have a problem? Or do you have a question? Then call in and ask your neighbor. 865-457-1380 or toll free at 877-711-4005. And for those of you that might be listening or watching on the internet, you can email from our website, WYSHradio.com. Just click on the Contact Us button and email your questions. Now sit back and listen as listeners throughout East Tennessee and the entire world answer your questions on Ask Your Neighbor on BBB TV 12 and AM 1380 WYSH.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome into Monday morning edition of Ask Your Neighbor. It's our pleasure to be along here with you this morning. Matt Reedy of Oak Ridge Driving School. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
How you doing this morning, Matt?
Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good. Matt's joining us here on Ask Your Neighbor on a Monday morning, and it's very relevant for me and our family because just as we speak, my stepdaughter, Demi, who's in answering the phones this morning, as you guys already know, she turns 16 today. And as anybody that can remember turning 16, a big event is, of course, driver's license. And Demi's been going. She started a while back, coming to see you guys, and it's helped her. It's helped her tremendously. So we can attest firsthand to the help that it has, the confidence that it gives. So let's first tell us a little bit about you.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, I own the driving center there in Oak Ridge. I've got twin boys who I taught how to drive many years ago. They're 23 now.
Okay.
Just graduated over at UT. And you know, I enjoyed that and started working with Coach Jim Wolfter, who used to own the business. And he decided to retire after COVID, and I took it over. But you'll love teaching. My wife and I live there in Oak Ridge. Been married 25 years this year.
Okay.
And just, thoroughly enjoy working with young people. Worked with young people my whole career. I was a youth pastor out of college and worked with young people at the city of Oak Ridge for 16 years. So it's just been a great marriage of my strengths, and I'm a pretty patient guy too. So you got to be
getting ready to go there.
You got to be when you teach people how to drive.
You know, I think I'm better at it than my wife because she'll get real nervous. I get kind of nervous depending on which of the kids we're teaching at the moment.
Sure.
But yeah, you have to have that patience. Have you ever been frightened in the car?
Oh, sure. I have those moments, but I have the extra brake pedal, and just a lot of tricks of the trade and skills to be able to help a student get out of a tricky situation. But mainly, we just can't control the other people. That's the hard part. Is always being on guard, ready for what other drivers are going to do. Because we follow further back than most people. We drive about the speed limit, sometimes a little under. So it helps us to be prepared. But yes, those moments can occur. But I always tell people, my soul's prepared. How's yours?
There you go. In your business, that's a good thing, pal.
Yeah.
That's great. Have you ever got into a fender bender with the kids? Or
No.
That's fantastic.
Not since 1989. We've not had anything. We've had somebody bump us from behind a few times, at a stop sign, but no damage or anything. But even just that can be really scary for a new driver. And so just being able to remain calm and laugh about things that, and help them get through it. But, break down and talk to the parents about how do we, make sure they understand, this could be traumatic, even though it didn't seem that bad, but
could have been.
These kids today, they wear their emotions, and they have a lot of anxiety. And so we help them deal with that.
I remember when my dad was teaching me to drive, and I was young. He let us drive. Where we live, it's now grown up. There are 500 houses where I grew up. But when I was there, when I was 15, 16 years old, there was probably 3 houses in the neighborhood. So,
sure,
we had a whole subdivision right there. He let me drive. But he had an old 1967 Volkswagen, the 4-speed and floor and all that.
4 on the floor.
And we had a retaining wall. Our driveway went up to the house, and then you turned right into the garage. But there was a retaining wall that came out from there. So I was pulling into the driveway one day, and it's just one of those things. As a kid, I went to slow down, and I hit the gas instead of the brake. And we missed the retaining wall by about 2 feet. I had to reach over. We ended up in the yard, but better the yard than the retaining wall. Yeah. And I was a pretty good driver, but it's so easy just to make a really quick mistake. And then what happened, at least with me, is when that mistake happened, you kind of, since you don't have the experience, you kind of panic, you know?
Yes.
And so I just held the gas before I realized to let it go.
Yes.
But it's those small little things that you have to kind of get used to, and I assume that's what you help the kids do.
Absolutely, and that's very common. A student panics, and we've had parents bring students to us, say, we try to get them out and teach them. They panicked. We had a little fender bender, or we hit an air conditioner at a church and thousands of dollars in damage, things like that.
Yeah.
So we have the brake pedal. We love teaching a kid from scratch. Say, let us do the hard work. Let us do the very beginning stuff. Teach them how to use their mirrors, how to, lane change, yields, the complicated intersections, and we give them the confidence to get out. Try harder things. Get on the interstate, head down to Malfunction Junction in Oak Ridge or Key Springs Road.
Oh, you brave, aren't you?
Absolutely. but it's so much easier when we have the brake pedal, and also we're not the mom and dad, so it's more of that respectful conversation instead of an argument.
Yes.
It's like, hey, well, you don't drive this way, Mom, or you don't drive this way, Dad. And so
what do you mean put my phone down?
Yeah,
I get it.
Absolutely. So it's one, we love to do it. We're trained and skilled to do it. Our instructors are trained to do that. And it's a joy to do it. I retired from the city of Oak Ridge and to do this because I enjoyed it so much. I enjoy being out doing it. We don't always get the best treatment on the road from the other drivers because we're kind of in the way. But we just know that going into it. We say, hey, we're not surprised by it because we expect it. But yeah, I enjoy it. And, kids that take our programs can save money on their car insurance. And so sometimes folks only want to come for that. And sometimes it's simply because driving's too scary for mom and dad or for the kid. And I taught an 83-year-old how to drive.
I was just getting to ask that.
Yeah. So it's not just kids. We have adults that we teach. We're seeing more 20 and 30-year-olds than ever before coming to drive because COVID kind of interrupted their plan.
Yeah.
And they stayed home and they kind of developed that a little bit of anxiety about doing those things. So we are teaching a lot of mid-20s folks like that. But yeah, the 83-year-old, she moved here from another country. Oh, wow. And her husband passed away, and they had lived in a major city their whole life. So she's never needed to drive.
Wow.
And suddenly finds herself with a vehicle and alone in her home. And so her friends convinced her at church, they convinced her to reach out. And, after several hours of lessons, she's on her own now, doing great.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Does, you mentioned something earlier about let you guys do the hard work. And I think sometimes it's easier for me to work with Demi, that I have more patience with Demi than I do with my boys. You know what I mean?
I can understand that.
So I could definitely understand. And Tracy's the same way. Tracy is probably a little harder on Demi than when she's working with my boys, and vice versa. They're stepkids.
It's very common.
So I could see that, whereas obviously being calm in the when you're teaching somebody is a big deal. So I could see where that would be a very, very positive thing. And have you had a lot of parents that brought the kids and said, we've tried, and it just were exasperated or scared or whatever?
Yeah, and I think part of that's because parents hasn't done that before. It's, if you're not a math teacher, you don't really know some of the tricks of the trade about how to get it across, and it ends to an argument, and you do not want an argument out in traffic. And so, and as you mentioned too, it was different back in the day when most of us were kids. Back in the 1900s, when I was a kid,
yeah,
it was different. The roads weren't as crowded, the cars weren't as quiet and powerful, and there's not all these distractions that are out there as there is today. And most of us drove lawnmowers and four-wheelers and golf carts and dirt bikes and things. These kids today, many of them have never done any of those activities. They don't spend their time outside, and many of them have been on the computers or on the phones and on the tablets. Many of these kids don't even know how to get home. They've been on a phone or a tablet in the car, so they're not watching the traffic lights. They don't know how the traffic lights work. They don't know how the signs work. And that's a whole nother level of difficulty when you're trying to start from scratch and you don't even know how things work. And so that can be frustrating for the parents when they're like, I don't understand how you don't know this, when they really haven't been watching and nobody's.
It's not been a priority to them. They've been a passenger.
And as we talked about too, back in the 1900s, we had driver ed in school.
Yeah.
And they don't teach driver ed in most school systems anymore. And the few that still have it, typically it's on about 50 kids a semester. It kind of messes up the block scheduling for some students that are kind of college track. That can mess that up as well. And so they don't get that opportunity, even the schools that do have it. I know in Morgan County they do have some driver education, but you got to go to the trade school to be able to take it. And so it kind of messes up that schedule for maybe a college prep.
Is there a reason that some of the schools have shied away from doing that? It seemed like, I don't know how many people they took or didn't take in ours, but we had 3 cars, I believe, and you could have 4 people or 3 people and an instructor in a car.
Sure.
And we had a little track at Campbell County. It was it wasn't real big, but there was a track that you learned on first with cones and all that before you ever got to go out on the road. And so we got to go through all of that. But is it the liability or?
It's a combination of things. I think some of it's the political pressure from the school systems have to kind of go to where the money is, and there's been a lot of push towards STEM, and so some programs are dropped, and it is expensive. Car insurance and vehicles and the maintenance on the vehicles, it is expensive, and school systems have to decide, should we provide this service, which may or may not be provided by an outside company, where we really are pressured to focus more on AP classes and STEM and things like that. And so, the education was shifted away from home economics, from driver education, from some of those type of things towards focusing on the more technical things. Now, Oak Ridge, for example, is recently added an aviation class. They've added auto body and mechanics, things that they didn't
aviation,
have.
like flying a plane? Yeah. Man, alive, I wish we'd have had that.
Yeah, I think that's really cool.
It is cool.
But they still see driver education, and I can understand. It's something that they kind of count on the families to decide. And with more and more students having the option of working remotely, ordering food online and groceries online and things, society has shifted away from driver education being a necessity. And studies have shown that driver education at a school system, when you've got the football coach just kind of reading the newspaper and kicking back, it's not that effective, unfortunately. So when students are taking it, they many times are expected to already know the basics before they take the class. So the education system, the numbers coming out just weren't that effective. It didn't show that driver ed was that effective. Where we do it, we're teaching the rules of the road. We're teaching how to drive safely, how to stay back from the other cars, drive the speed limit, and doing it in such a way of confidence. Because since COVID, we have the most emotional society ever with social media. There's just a lot of selfishness on the roads, and the kids are scared. They see their parents road raging and angry and driving really fast, and these young people are like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to drive. And eventually they come to the realization, I kind of need to learn to drive in East Tennessee.
I know it's so different today because, I just counted down the days, the seconds. I remember my parents actually bought me my first car. It was a Opel Man. Into rally, 1970 something. I remember it was a big deal because it was like $1,200, which was a lot of money in 1980 something. And but I had to pay for my own insurance. That was the deal. They would get me the first car, help me if I wanted something better than that. They would have helped me get something better than that. But I would have had to make up the difference, and I couldn't. But when you look at the way that things were then as opposed to the way things are now, there are a lot of kids, like you said, that they don't have that big excitement about getting my driver's license. It's kind of like, okay, right. I can live with it or without it until they start to need it, want to go somewhere. No, I'm not taking you. Moms, no, I'm not taking you. And if they don't have a driver's license, they can't drive themselves.
Right. And then, most employers, you got to have reliable transportation and a driver's license. You have to have a license to buy a car.
Sure. And
you have to have a license, to do a lot of things in our society. And so many times those type of things is what finally leads them to push them over the edge. Okay, now I have to learn to drive. But, we let them know right off the bat, hey, we're not here. We're not, judging you. We're not making this. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is dangerous stuff. Maybe the most dangerous thing you'll ever do. So why not learn it with me, with a professional instructor? And I'm going to teach you some of the rules of the road that some people don't know as well. But we do driver education classes and private lessons. So some students only need a couple of hours of private lessons. Others need the full class, which is state approved, AAA approved classes. So, we have packages and options for everybody. We also teach traffic school for all the folks that get speeding tickets and need to go court-appointed traffic school. We teach that there in Oak Ridge as well on Bus Terminal Road where our office is. But things have changed. Our lives have changed. Folks have gotten busy, and many times it's just things happen fast. And the young people, like I said, they can connect with their friends online. Remember what it was like when you and I, we had.
Oh, you cruised. You got in the car and drove down to the mall, or you drove around here, the gas, wherever it was that everybody hung out.
That's how you socialized. That's how you got out and met people. And now, kids can do that on online gaming. They can play a game with their friend who's in another city, So things have been different on that respect. But still, driving is still so essential to our lives. It's not until sometimes when a student's 22, 23 when they come to that realization.
You mentioned go-karts and lawnmowers and all that, and I've in fact, in my garage right now, there are 3 go-karts. Demi's got one, James, David, and Jacob. They've all 3 got a go-kart. Riding lawnmowers, at least one ATV and a motorcycle. So they have the opportunity to ride a lot of stuff, but as opposed to when I grew up, I had a whole neighborhood, it wasn't built up yet. So I was out on my motorcycle. My dad got me one for my 8th birthday, and I've had one ever since. It's been a long time. So when I transferred from riding lawnmowers and at that time motorcycles over to being in a car, even though I hadn't been around a lot of traffic, I still was used to, you drive on this side of the road, you kind of just the things you knew.
Yes.
But I didn't even think about it till now. Most kids don't have that opportunity to even get the the basic from a go-kart. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, even driving Mario Kart and things like that can be helpful.
Yes.
I'll ask a student, have you ever even played a video game with a steering wheel? Many of them haven't.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did. We had those opportunities to go out and make mistakes. We played outside. You had the opportunity to get out and do those things. But also when you're riding in the car, if you remember, we had those little games and you'd flip the little slides. Oh, I saw a sign. I saw a traffic or a license plate from out of state. These kids are on phones and tablets, and it's just a different time.
It's a greatly different time. But you don't really realize it until, like I said, our kids are starting to get of age, and it's just a different scenario.
Absolutely. One
One thing that I found that was kind of jarring was insurance today for young people. Man, that has changed too.
Yes.
I remember. I don't recall my insurance being such a drastic hit when I started, and I remember I had to pay for my own.
Yes.
As it is now that I've got youngins coming up. My oldest is 18, and of course Demi just turned 16. Man, putting them in it changes a lot.
Yes.
A lot. I mean, it's almost as much for one young policy as it is for my other 4 cars,
Yeah, car insurance has definitely increased. And, when I talk to insurance agents, they tell me we hit a record number of crashes every month. We hit a new record. It's because of cell phones and distractions. There's more and more rear-end collisions every month than ever before. And so the insurance companies have no choice but to pass those costs along. And why not pass it along to the riskiest drivers on the road? And statistically, 50% of new drivers will have a ticket or a crash in their first year. 50%.
Wow. Do you think that we'll ever see a day when either car manufacturers or cell phone manufacturers or something figure out a way that they can disable a lot of the social aspects of the phone, where you still have your 911 or whatever to stop people when they get in the car? I mean, I know really astute people that are smart, that are, just well-rounded people. You'll see them going down the road with a phone in their hand, And we're all, I won't say we are all guilty of it. I've been guilty of it, and it's one of those things. My son James David, he'll like, Dad, put the phone down. Yeah. Well, that is one good thing with this, with the youngsters today. At least they hear that a lot. They know that it's right. But do you ever see a day, or do you think that something like that is needed or would help? Because, man, they're distracted on their phones.
Yeah, statistically, we have twice as many crashes per capita than they do in the UK. And in the UK, they have manual transmission cars. So you have to have both hands involved. And I don't see us going back to manual transmission. However, I do think there will be technology that will come along that will be able to tell whether 2 hands are on the wheel or not, if your eyes are not up. Like I have a 2024 Honda Accord that I teach in, and if your eyes are not looking out at the road or whatever, there's a button or there's a light that comes on that says driver attention low, and it'll actually remind you that you need to be focused on the road. And so some of these new cars are coming out with those technologies. However, we are also lazy Americans, as people say, and we love our technology. We love our blind spot monitoring and our lane keep assist and our cruise control and all these things. And that only, unfortunately, leads to more people using those technologies to allow them to look down, look at the phones.
See, I've never had any of those technologies before. My cars, up until the car we just bought Thursday, I think the latest model car that I had was a 2008. I hate car payments.
Yes.
I hate them. And so I've not had one for 20 some odd years until now. But one of the things that I wanted, because I'm 60 years old and I'm a good driver. I've never had an accident at all. But I found myself a number of times is I can now just so much as maybe look over at something and I've drifted across the road in no time. It seems like I'm like, maybe my car's out of line. It's not, you're not as attentive, it seems, as I was 20 years ago, maybe.
Sure.
And so I find it really helpful. But I'm of a generation that even if I'm not near on my phone like the younger generation is, but it seems very helpful to folks like me and like my wife Tracy. It's it was funny because I was driving home last night and I was like, watch this. I just let it ease over and it like whoop, pull me right back in the lane. I just thought that was the coolest thing ever,
Yeah, these new technologies are really great. And I'm always asked, what do you recommend for young people? What do you recommend for cars and things? And I do think it's better to have the newer technology than to not. The airbags and cruise, and the lane keep assist and forward collision avoidance, blind spot monitoring. However, I've had people tell me, I had the little fender bender because my blind spot monitoring didn't tell me somebody was there. And it's like, well, you're supposed to look over that shoulder still.
Yeah.
But, I do think that it's a crutch. But you think about how many people that we all know are out texting and driving. All it takes is that two people meeting at one point that are both looking down at the same time. And so I do wish that we were less connected. In the UK, there's stricter penalties and also much stricter tests in the UK, which is why they have less crashes. Here, did you know if you're under 18, you can take your permit at home on your phone now?
So I did not.
That written exam can now be done on the phone with a parent proctoring a student. So
I did know. I do remember because Tracy looked into that, when Demi was getting hers. Yes. I remember that now.
And it's leading to more and more young people not really learning the rules of the road. They can kind of like try it over and over and over again until they finally pass at home. Or also they can, possibly cheat because they're, it's kind of open book potentially, even though they're not supposed to. And then the driving tests themselves, and this is nothing against the folks at the DMV because I love those folks. They're great to work with, but they're under a lot of pressure, and they're out here with students that may not be that great. And many of these driving tests are 4 right turns right around the building. There's no parallel parking anymore. There's no maneuverability anymore. And so we've got a lot of people that are out on the roads driving that don't know the rules. They don't really know how to operate a vehicle, and they do have all these new technologies in the car that they don't know how to operate. And so we do a lot of that education as well about how these things work and why, when to use them, when not to use them as well. So it's it's all encompassing education, and it's a life skill. You have to learn how, and you need to learn safely as well. So.
Absolutely. You were mentioning the course you drive or don't drive on your driver's test. I told you I got a motorcycle when I was 8 years old. I've had one ever since, some 20 years ago, and I'd been riding for a long time before that. I was just riding down the road one day, and there was a police stop, checking license. I stopped, I handed him my license, and I'm chit-chatting, I think I knew the officer from being on the radio and whatever.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Ron, you don't have a motorcycle stamp." And I was like, "What?" Yeah, it never dawned on me. Never dawned on me. And I'd had one for, at that time, 20, 30 years. I don't know. And so I was like, okay, I'll take care of that. Not a problem. And I just jolted in like everything. Like, I've been riding for 30 years. I don't know. And took the test and failed it. The first time, you talk about embarrassing, I was like, wow, I failed the written test. I missed like 2 more questions than you were allowed to. And so I went back and started reading all of it and looking at all of it. And even though I was a safe driver and, like I said, never had a wreck, there's a lot of stuff I did it, but I didn't realize why I did it. I learned a lot. So I had to go back and take it the second time. And then for the driver's test, the lady was like, "How long have you been riding?" I said, 32 years or whatever, however long it had been at that time. And she was like, "Well, just drive over to that car and back." So I did. That was okay.
Yes.
I had been driving for a long time, but literally I drove maybe from here to the front door and back, and that was it.
That was it.
That was my driver's test. So.
Yeah. I get a lot of folks. I teach people from all over the world that are moving here to work at Oak Ridge National Lab. Maybe they're working at University of Tennessee. I've got 2 or 3 students right now at University of Tennessee who've moved here from other major cities, and they're finally needing to learn to drive. And they're blown away at how easy the tests are, because they'll say, "Hey, Matt, can you just teach me how to pass the driving test?" And I'll say, "Well, I could. That wouldn't be a good idea for either of us.
Yeah.
But I will eventually show them the test." And they're like, "Well, what did I pay you for?"
I knew all this stuff.
I'm like, this is how easy the tests are. You could literally never have driven before, maybe figure it out in a couple hours. And once again, nothing against the folks that do those tests, but that our expectations are lower. We're pushing kids through in the school systems. We're dumbing down the education system in some ways. We're dumbing down our driver education, and unfortunately, that's leading to problems on the road for all of us. We are all connected.
Do you think that it's because, too, there was just not as much to be distracted with or about? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Back the driver's test. When have they updated the driver's test? I mean, and when have they updated to follow different law changes and such?
Yeah, there is the tests are updated.
And they're still that easy, though.
They are, and I would say the written test is a little tougher. However, if you're under 18, you can still take that at home, and so there's that crutch a little bit, so that a student may or may not have to read the manual. But there are questions on there that even you and I might struggle with because of the new information that's out about hands-free laws, about how many feet you give to a bicyclist when you pass them on the road. Most of us, we don't know that.
I don't know how many. What is the answer?
The number is 3 feet, and the answer will say 3, 4, 5, or 6. And guys like me and you would probably go, well, at least 5, I'd say.
Yeah,
but the answer is 3. So there's questions like that.
And that is 3 feet beside them?
Yes, so that's a minimum. So what's the minimum follow distance in Tennessee?
There you go.
Most of us growing up in the 1900s were taught 2 car lengths is the minimum. Well, we don't teach car lengths anymore. Now it's the number of seconds that we follow.
Yes.
So now
is it 7?
2 seconds is the minimum. Now, what we teach is recommended is 3 to 4 seconds. But the state of Tennessee is out policing the roads.
I'd fail this test.
Yes. So there are things like that have changed on the tests. There are things like that in our driver education that's changed as well, about how we teach certain skills because the cars have changed. We have airbags are standard, anti-lock brakes are standard. And many cars also have, these lane keep technologies that are going to help correct in a skid, or if you leave your lane, they're going to help. And so we don't teach the same way. But much of it's still the same.
Do you teach turn into a slide if you're skidding or that kind of stuff? Or
so that's how we used to talk.
Yeah.
We were taught to turn into the skid. Now we teach a student to look and steer where they're going. So try to get back over into your lane. It's kind of like on the movie The Polar Express when that train slides around. You're looking down the tracks and you're trying to steer back this way. If you go too far, you steer back that way. And that's obviously in a light skid. Some put you there, but there's things like that we teach that are different than we were taught back in the day. But most of it's let's yield the right of way when we're supposed to. Let's be patient, kind, courteous. How do we respond and things? But also it's scary now. There's road rage is at all-time high. Medication behind the wheel. People are on prescription drugs, illegal, illicit drugs. There's questions about, can somebody smoke pot and drive because it's legal in some places? And so we see more and more confusion about rules of the road than ever before. What's allowed, what's not allowed. Turning into the correct lane. Many people turn into the far lane when they take a left instead of the closest correct lane.
Yeah.
Things like that just, they see the guy in front of them do it, so they think it's okay.
What's the hardest habit you have to help kids break, or students break? What habit do they bring in that you need to work with?
Well, most of them just the spatial awareness, and they stop way too slow. Y'all may have seen the videos online of kids nearly hitting a police car in front of them, and the dad screaming, stop.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing, is they just don't stop early enough. So
they don't start breaking.
Yeah, they break too late. And also most of them are looking at their dash a lot because they're figuring things out.
Yeah.
So they're looking down, looking up, looking down. So we teach them, if you look far enough ahead, you'll see the future. So if you want to see the future, look far ahead. And most of them will start to kind of emulate that, where they're looking at the red lights or they see brake lights ahead. Most of them, when they're brand new, no matter what age, they don't see the brake lights ahead. They don't see the red light ahead. And so
I think they're so either enamored or tense, you know what I mean? Sure. That a lot of the peripheral things that are going on around them, they're just worried about what's going on in that car at the moment, you know, inside that cabin.
Yeah, and this goes for you and I both. Our society, we become, our attention span is much lower than it used to be. All of us now are scrollers. We're on our phones and we're scrolling, and so I'll tell a student, now remember this. The speed limit, the speedometer, your mirrors, those are not videos. That's an image. You need to take a quick peek at it, not stare at it. Because I'll look over and a student's like watching the numbers go up and down. They're like, watch, 35, 36, 37.
Yeah.
And I'll say, hey, get the head up.
Yeah.
We need to be looking out here. And so many of us would fall into that trap as well if we were learning today.
One thing that we're talking to my stepdaughter, that's one thing she doesn't like to have to look down at that. And this new vehicle we got, it's got that on-glass display, which is
yes.
And you were talking about getting close. I don't know how far it does or doesn't, but like driving it home, it would let me know if I was too close to somebody. It gives you like a little yellow. And then it gives you, if you're too close, a red. Basically saying you're too close to this other guy in front of you, which is is cool. But the on-screen or on windshield display is helpful for maybe kids doing that too, learning that.
Yeah, the heads-up display can be great. It's just one of those things that I love about the new technologies in the car. There's so many good things to love, really. But, smart cruise, forward collision avoidance in our smart cruise, you put cruise on and it will take a picture of the folk ahead of the guys ahead of you and actually back you away from them, and it'll keep you match their speed with some of these new things. And some of those are great, but they can also be a crutch. And, a student many times won't even take the time to learn. They don't read a manual. They're not going to learn until somebody actually sits down with them and teaches them how these technologies work, too.
In this day and time in our society, there are a lot of grandparents raising their grandkids.
Absolutely. My parents are doing that.
And so you know that the way that I learned to drive or that you learned to drive and how we drive, like I learned in a 67 Volkswagen. We were lucky to have a radio, much less anything else.
Sure.
So grandparent, have you seen, not necessarily generational disconnect, but when grandparents come in to bring the kids in, they might not have this on screen or any of this. They're driving a 1992, whatever it might be.
Sure.
Kids come in with, do you have to unteach some stuff sometimes?
Well, sure. I do. And I'll tell them, hey, I'm not trying to make your parents or grandparents out to be bad guys, but you probably have seen some behavior, and the kids all raise their hand. Yeah, my dad does this or my mom does this. And I'll say, once again, I'm not here to emulate or pick on them, but there are things that we all get habits, and so I'm here to try to help you develop positive habits. But when a parent or grandparent doesn't know the newer cars and the newer technologies, or even the refresh of the rules of the road, because those have changed. Hands-free law. You are not allowed to have your hand on your phone at any time, and they're ticketing for it mostly when people are touching the phone while the car's in motion. So if a grandparent.
So I didn't know that. So you can't. You're not supposed to, when it says hands-free, it doesn't mean, because a lot of times I'll just get my phone and say, hey, Siri, but I've got it in my hand.
Yeah, sure.
But so it's illegal to have it in your hand, huh?
Yeah, it's even illegal to reach for it, according to the way the law reads. You're not supposed to be reaching for the phone, even if it's on a stationary block. You're not supposed to be reaching up and messing with that phone. And so when I talk to officers about it, I'll say, hey, Tennessee writes more tickets for hands-free than any other state because they're trying to curb the usage. But when are you guys writing those tickets? I want to know. They'll tell me. They'll say, well, speed-wise, sometimes if you're 9, you're fine. If you're 10, you're mine. They'll say that.
Yeah.
But they'll say, as far as hands-free goes, they said we could write hundreds of tickets a day on about every street out here. We really are trying to look for people that are out here leaving their lane. They're not paying attention. We see their heads going down like this, and we know right then. They're looking down. They see the glow of that phone.
Yeah.
Essentially, when you're in motion, you shouldn't have that phone in your hand. You shouldn't be touching it. And I'm glad that they're at least taking a look at this, because it's not safe.
No, it really isn't, and it's one of those things that I think snuck up on us.
It did.
It's it's not like we just had this new invention drop down on us and it immediately was acclimated into everything that we do. The phones have stepped up and evolved
Oh, sure.
constantly, and it's just, I don't know, it's become part of our everyday life, and that part includes when we get in the car.
I had a Motorola bag phone in the mid-'90s.
I still got one back here in the back room.
And it had like 10 numbers saved in it.
Yeah.
But essentially, we had to know the numbers we were calling back then and some of those things. But I had the Nokia brick and the Kia Sarah flip phone and on. And then in 07, when the iPhone came out, everything changed. The smartphone became so much more connected to all of us, of all ages. And I've had to teach my parents and my grandparents, my wife's grandparents, how to use phones over the years. And I'm sure the kids will be teaching me things over the years as well going forward. But those smartphones have dramatically changed. And I'll remind people that iPhone came out the same year our new drivers came out. These kids.
Oh, that's right.
These kids that are driving today came out.
They were born with an iPhone.
Year.
Yeah.
They've had that technology in their hand their entire life, from tablet to phone to
I didn't
things.
Think of that.
And it's dramatically changed their life, and many of us think we can use old methods to teach them, and in some ways it can work. I mean, if you have a young man or a young woman who can get out on the farm and drive and drive tractors and things, That's great. Get them out there doing it. Just most kids don't have options for that anymore.
The perspective. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
I mean, they came into the world with this technology that you and I saw develop, and man, it's just amazing to us.
Sure.
Again, going from the bag phone to right now, I can just say something and my phone will call it and show me pictures and everything else. So I appreciate this technology and where it's come from, and both remember what it was like without it and having to have the skills to function without it. But these youngsters, this is what they were born with.
Yeah, and a lot of folks like to pick on the younger generation for certain things, but they're incredible at multitasking, listening to music while doing homework and watching this and doing this.
I can't do that.
But what I will remind them of is it takes them longer to do the same assignment as someone who's not doing all those distractions. Little breaks. They have to take little breaks. But they try to do that in their car. They'll try to listen to music and be on their phone and be texting the friend. And I'll remind them, that one text message you send, it's mentally distracting you for up to 27 seconds. So you send a text message to your friend. What are you doing over the next 12, 15 seconds? You're thinking, did I say that right? What are they going to say back? How am I going to respond to what they say? Next thing you know, you have driven 2 or 3 football fields down the road and you're mentally distracted. Even though you're not texting and driving, you are mentally texting and driving because you're so distracted by the most important thing in your life is this guy right here. And so telling a student to put it away, turn it off, connect it to hands-free and things like that. Many of them will do it in the beginning because they are scared and they're really wanting to follow that and they don't want to lose that privilege. So we warn all of our new drivers about the 6-month danger window. After about 6 months, students start to get really confident. They start adding in those behaviors they see their parents doing.
Yeah.
And then that's when they have a crash or a ticket. And you just hope and pray that that's all it is, because it can be much more dangerous, much more serious.
I know we've seen some pretty devastating accidents with kids and cell phones and things like that. Do you, I don't want to say try and scare them straight or whatever, but do you take some of those examples and say, look what can happen to this, wonderful kid, just a glance down or a text?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we have some, in what we teach in our driver education classes, the education has changed. Back in the 70s and 80s, they'd show some pretty gruesome videos.
I remember.
So we're not allowed to show some of those, but we do show videos where someone's giving their testimony about their son or daughter who has died because they were texting and driving or because of a drunk driver or something like that. And when you think about the PSAs that we saw about drunk driving and don't do this and don't do that.
Remember the crash test dummies?
Yeah. But you know what? People don't watch commercials as much as they used to.
They buzz through them.
They skip through them, or they do it. They on demand everything. They watch. They get a premium service, so they don't have to do that. And so it's more and more difficult to let people know about these things than ever before. I'll ask in the class. Is smoking pot legal in Tennessee? And most of the kids aren't sure. They don't know because they're like, it may or may, it's not.
It's not.
But they're not sure.
Sure.
And so then I'll say, well, can you use that behind the wheel? And culture tells them that a lot of people are doing that. And so I'll say, no, I don't think you should do that. I was like, well, no, absolutely you should. And it's treated the same as a DUI or DUID. And there is that misconception about an assumption that people know right from wrong when the culture and other states may be legalizing something or whatever. And so it causes a lot of confusion that's not really being addressed.
And do you think that, do you think that our state or our lawmakers or whatever can do anything? Is there anything that maybe is beholden to them that they could do to step up, maybe to try and make things safer? I mean, they can make law, but then we have to abide by it. But is there anything that our state's working on, the country's working on, looking at addressing some of these problems that we're having with phones and kids?
There's constant look at the hands-free laws and how do we protect our folks from themselves. It's being looked at. Unfortunately, the car manufacturers, they know how to sell vehicles. They want people comfortable. They want people to be able to feel connected on the road. They want people to enjoy those comforts, and that's what sells. And also, being a police officer these days is not it's not the job that a lot of people are going after because they're under such scrutiny. And so, like Knox County is 100 officers short right now, and how difficult it is for them to do their job. And so, what we teach in our class is being incredibly respectful of those individuals, how to handle a pull, how if you're stopped, and also understanding these people are here to protect and serve. They're not the enemy. They're actually our friend out here on the road. But the officers themselves go through lots and lots of training, constant how to handle dealing with folks with autism or anxiety or, various other difficulties. Pulling over a young person, how do you work with that, work with them? Because they also know many of these students have never had driver education. You pull them over, they don't know what to do. They must have been told not to trust the police. And so, that's a challenge. National Highway Safety Council, State of Tennessee, AAA, many organizations are trying to figure out how to curb some of these behaviors. And I believe that education is a big factor in that. And without the education, you can put all the bells and whistles and the changes in the car, but if people just turn it off, and they have to make a conscious decision and effort to be safe.
People that had kids in their 20s, they're maybe in their late 30s, early 40s right now. Do they see things different than, say, I would? Or is the change even after that? In other words, do they, the technology that they said that they grew up with is a little different than what I grew up with, but not as different as what my kids are growing up with right now.
Yeah.
So in do you see the different ways, steps, or skills that people are teaching their kids to drive different from somebody like me versus somebody that's in their mid-20s or mid-30s or something that's got a 16-year-old at home?
Yeah, I do. I think that there's maybe a little more awareness of the technology and about what the kids are doing. Mm-hmm. Where I think sometimes a young person can kind of pull the wool over the eyes of the maybe elderly the parent or slightly older parent, where they're able to take screenshots of things and kind of create these fake realities. I think sometimes there's disconnect there. But as far as our kids have had behind the wheel out in the truck, took them out on the country road and said, all right, drive.
Let's go.
And it builds a lot of confidence, and they're out there and they're relaxed and teaching there. So I think that there's definitely the possibility that anybody can be taught by anybody, but I do think sometimes there's a disconnect of the technology, of the rules of the road. Because when I teach traffic school once a month, some of the things we talk about is what's changed, and many of us will think about, well, I took driver ed back in the day and I knew all of this stuff, and right off the bat I have a quiz that blows them out of the water and they're like, I didn't know any of these things.
Exactly.
And so sometimes that can really open up the eyes of the 50 and up driver who has been driving the same way forever. Like you said about your motorcycle, I didn't know that was a rule. I've been driving the same way the whole time.
Yeah. So
I think that we can all use a refresher. I think we can all use some safety mentality, because when you really realize it, no matter what somebody's job is, most likely the most dangerous thing they will do is get in the car and drive to work. Even if they're a welder or in construction or whatever, getting in the vehicle and driving to work is statistically most likely going to paralyze or kill them, not what they do at work.
Exactly.
But think about it, we don't have, we think about when we get to that workplace, we got our safety shoes and our gear, and we're maybe thinking about harnesses, and we're thinking about videos that we saw for training and things, but we get in that car and just drive. And many times that is the most dangerous thing we do every day. And most of us have gotten real lazy about it.
Distracted
very
driving.
Comfortable. Our cars are made very comfortable these days too. They're very distracted. So most people won't admit it, but when you look around on the roads, it doesn't take long to realize how distracted people are.
Oh, yeah. The one thing with this new vehicle that we got, once I synced my phone to it, when I get in the car, it automatically syncs.
Sure.
I don't have to do anything. It knows I'm there.
Yes.
And so I can then, it makes it easier to pay attention to the road, but it also makes it easier to use your device, because you can put your device, I can put it in the console, and I can say, call Tracy.
Yes.
Call her, and I'm talking to her and driving.
Yeah.
So it is that good, bad, or is it indifferent? Because you're still distracted.
Yeah.
I'm still having a conversation,
Yeah, most driving professionals believe that all this connectivity is not better. It's
Gotcha.
definitely not. But however, if you're using hands-free, it's definitely better than having it in your hand because you lose ability to control everything going on. And studies have shown that you're just as mentally distracted though when you're using hands free. You're mentally somewhere else. If I'm having a conversation, I'm not able to process things the same. But it is better. These connectivity things are better than having that physical phone in your hand, requiring you to look down a lot. If I have my Apple CarPlay up there, or my wife has Android Auto, my mapping is there, my text message and my phone is there, and I can use voice commands and send it. It's definitely better. However, it's not perfect.
You ever got a ticket?
I had my only ticket I ever got. I was 18 years old, driving 31 in a 25. Just like you mentioned, I live in a small town up in Emory, Virginia. And I was driving by and I waved at the officer because I had grown up there and I knew the guy. Well, it was a substitute that day.
Oh, no.
It wasn't the same guy. And, man, he was pretty upset with me. He's like, you waved at me and all this stuff. And, man, I learned my lesson, and I thought I would go to court and explain myself. I'm a good student. And the only reason I got the ticket is because it was pouring the rain, and I took somebody to class. I didn't even know. I saw him walking in the rain. I pulled over, picked him up. Man, after that ticket, I was like, man, I'm never helping anybody ever again. But, I was 18 at the time, and I tell everybody the same thing. Have I deserved 1,000 or more tickets?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure.
We all have. And when we think about it, we get distracted. We drive down hills, going a little too fast, taking, things. We roll through stop signs occasionally in our neighborhoods that we shouldn't do. When people do get tickets, they get upset. And I say, hey, you've been playing the ticket lottery. You finally won.
Let me ask you this. It's something that I've had a problem with over the years driving. It's right turns, especially if there's a curb or something.
Sure.
I can't tell you how many times I've turned into my driveway. It doesn't hurt anything, but it's like, I didn't mean to do that. And it's just trying to get that perspective. Is there a specific time you're supposed to turn when you're going to turn right? Or,
every curve is different.
Gotcha.
Every single one is a different angle and all these things. So most of the time people get too close to the curve to begin with, and then they turn at the same time, and that's when they hit it.
Gotcha.
And so you just have to keep your distance away a little bit.
I'm terrible at drive-thrus, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, there are great skills that you can actually learn your reference points.
Yeah.
So if you just pull up next to a curb on the left, and you can get out and look at it and say, oh, okay, that's really good. Then you get back in the driver's seat, and if you look where that curb matches your hood, you'll never have to guess again, because you know where that 1 inch, 2 inches away is when that curb comes at your hood. So that's called reference point.
Gotcha.
So, and the same is true when you're taking right turns. Once you've done it a few times in that vehicle, if you're paying attention to those little details, you won't have to guess, because it's going to be the same. But do we really, we get mentally distracted, or we're doing something else and we turn in, especially when we're near our homes, because most of us are not we're not focused when we're near our homes. We're so comfortable.
I'm sure you've probably had this happen. I know I have, but even before phones, I would just be driving, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm at work. You know what I mean? It's like,
yes.
Wow, I don't remember getting here, because you got so much on your mind or whatever's going on, but literally don't remember the 5-minute drive.
Yeah, that's part of the other thing is we are the drowsiest society ever. Think about all the caffeinated companies that have just exploded out of the woodwork. We all got it up, and many of us are zombie drivers in the morning or in the evening or at some time during the day. And we have these autopilot moments when we're highway hypnosis, and we're like, well, I hope that light was green. I was staring.
I've done that.
Yes.
I went through it and not even realized till I'm past it. Like, I have no idea if I just ran a red light or not.
Right. And it's because you're human. You make errors. We're not, we get on autopilot. We're never meant to be on autopilot, but it happens. And then I just remind people, think about that. These people that are next to you in traffic, they have emotional issues they're dealing with, their family struggles, work issues. They're mentally distracted by all the parts of their life. Our life has gotten very complicated. Why would you try to antagonize this person or speed past them and pull in front of them, assuming they're even paying attention? Think about it. We all have these moments where we go on autopilot, or we're just not at our best. Because I'll ask, hey, how good of a driver do you think you are? And most people say 8 out of 10. And I'll say, all right, how good are all the other drivers on the road? What do you think most people
6?
say? Yeah,
6.
They say 5 or 6.
Uh-huh.
And I'll say, well, how is that even possible? Because everybody in the room said the same thing. And I'll say, just look around. Everybody in here judged you as a 6, but you judged everybody else the same way. We all think we're better than we are. And that's just part of the problem on the roads. We don't like to take, responsibility for what we did wrong, but we sure see that guy in front of us driving poorly.
I'll tell you, since my oldest Trey is 18, he's been driving for 2 years. Timmy's getting ready to drive, and my twins are 14. And it's kind of a family thing. Since Timmy was learning, I went ahead and I'm teaching the boys too, trying to get an early start on it. But it just seems like that. I don't know, in these days and times, trying to get all that, teach them, what we need them to do, I don't know, it's a little bit overwhelming for parents. It is. It's a little bit overwhelming to try and do it. What advice do you give? What advice do you have for people out there that they've got kids that are coming of age to learn to drive? What age should they start? When are they allowed to? And grandparents out there, what would you ask, encourage them to look at, whether or not they use your service, but certainly give them the things to look out for?
So I can teach a student as young as 14, because in Tennessee, you're allowed to get your hardship license at 14. In order for a young person to get their license at 14, they do have to take the class that I teach, like that. And once they complete that, it's a 30-hour class, 4 days in a classroom, and 6 hours of driving lessons with me on the road, they can go take their test, and then they can get a license at 14 years old. That's for a student who needs to because of a hardship at home, or if both parents work. That's all it takes. If both parents work, typically a student can get approved for that.
Okay.
I believe for most students, age 15 and 16 is the right time to put them in the driver education program. And I also want to caution folks, if your student is 18, 19, 20, don't assume that they will pick this up on their own. You'll have to nudge them and help them understand how important this is for them to come. And so parents, grandparents, please understand, this is a life skill, and it is scary. And many times these kids are putting it off. They're looking to you for direction. And if you don't take that initiative, many times those kids will just assume, okay, I'm good. I guess I'll be okay not driving. They really need you to step up for them and help them do this, because it is scary. And many parents today, unfortunately, they're afraid of having some of these hard conversations with their kids, because kids can be very, emotional and reactionary and things.
Oh no, my kids are never like that. No, come on.
And it's not that kids have always been like that. We were all like that, but now with social media, and people do feel like they're under a microscope, and so a young person, everything they say, do, who they hang out with, everything is all being under a microscope. And there's record. When you and I were young, we go out and do silly things out and driving around in a field or learning how to do things, cruising around. People didn't know what we were up to. And, we got out and made mistakes. Kids today, there's almost like a recording of everything per se. And so it is a lot more difficult to have these kids. So I tell parents, have that conversation with a young person, help take that initiative when they're 15, 16, sign them up for driver education. Many of them they're not going to be that excited about it right off the bat, but I can promise you, when we get them in there, we're going to care about them. We're going to make them understand how important driver education is, teach them the rules of the road, teach them how to get safe. We're not here to sugarcoat it. It is dangerous, but taking this class hopefully helps them with their confidence, to know what the rules of the road are, and how that they can drive safely for their whole lifetime. So I do believe it's an investment in their life to take driver ed, to potentially prevent any financial loss, physical harm, health related issues, jail time, fines, tickets. We really try to make this and help people understand it's an investment. Our class is for driving lesson and the 30-hour class, but most folks that go through that will save $200 to $300 per year on car insurance until age 25. So you might save $2,000 or $3,000 on a $400 investment, and you have the peace of mind that you didn't have to teach them in your car, and And then we've taught them maybe the harder stuff, getting them on the interstate, taking them to these hard places out here, Raccoon Valley Road and all these other. We take them all over the place.
Yeah.
So we really try to give the value to the families. Some folks will say, you know, I only want to sign my student up for maybe a couple hours of driving lessons. That's fine too. And those range anywhere $60 an hour to depends. I'll pick a student up in Crossville or La Follette, Strawberry Plains. You know, we charge a little more for those services, but we're happy to come and pick them up, you know, teach them how to drive in their neighborhood and everything, and then branch out from there.
But the class that includes all of the education and 6 driving?
Yes.
$450.
It's $450, and so and we charge about $100 less than some of the schools in Knoxville, and they're great. We love those folks; they're great schools. But you know, being here in being there in Oak Ridge at our office, maybe our costs are a little lower, whatever. But we charge much less than some of the other schools.
Are there things like? I mean, I know you're just regular public company, or are there scholarships, or are there things like that involved in something like this? Because it's borderline school, you know.
It is,
but it's also, you know, life education.
So, you know, in some cases, an employer has a fund where they will pay for education-related purposes.
Okay.
And so, in a lot of cases, if someone, an employer or an employee will ask their employer, they'll pay for that class for their kids. Sometimes the kid is already working at an employer that will cover those fees.
Okay.
You know, they just have to go ask, especially when the employer knows, hey, if this kid learns how to drive, that can count.
They'll get to work on time.
They'll get to work on time. And plus, I can also possibly create an agreement where say, hey, if I pay for this class, you have to stay here for at least a year. You know, we come to that agreement where you agree to come and stay, or you have to pay me back for that class.
Well, I was teasing on the air today, saying, you know, Demi's going to go get a driver's license. I'm calling it her chauffeur's license because she can go to the store. We need bread. Go take absolutely. The kids here. Go do that. So, I mean, it will seem to anybody getting it that it would be, you know, we're going to send them out into the world with our kids, everybody else's kids, or whoever else to take the class and be just as much more prepared as you can get.
Yeah, and you know, we tell folks. Plus, the students do enjoy it more if they, you know, because they've got friends that are the same age and the same life issues. So, hey, invite your friend to come. Y'all can sit together in the class. But we do drive one kid at a time. As far as in the car, it's laser focused on that student for their hour of driving or their 2-hour lesson, whatever it is. But you know, we really encourage them to you know, care about their friends at school, get the word out. You know, for those listening right now, you know, grandparents, parents, neighbors, please encourage them. Gift it to them. If you know there's a birthday coming up.
That's a great idea. What a great idea.
Get together and say, you know, hey, I'm doing this for you. Maybe this is not something that young person would do for themselves. That's a great gift to grandkids or to your neighbors.
That's a great gift to us, too, if that one accident that, you know, could hurt them. Yeah. Better driver, boys or girls?
Well,
there you go.
I would say it depends on who you ask. I would say many of my best physical able to drivers have been boys, but they are usually my rule breakers and my other things. But my girls, they know the rules of the road, and they're cautious and careful and considerate. And so when you talk about it, it's a mix. But I've had some girls that are incredibly great drivers, technical. But you know, right now, insurance companies are actually charging the same for boys and girls because they've seen that it's kind of leveled out. It used to be that boys were more expensive, but it's kind of leveled out, and things like that. So, you know, that's a tough question, but man, I for me, when I have somebody who knows the rules of the road and they care about safety, that's a good driver to me.
My son was asking me. He likes to drift his go-kart. You know, he'll get in and drift it in the yard. He's like, Dad, have you ever drifted a car? And I said, I have. But I was sitting there thinking about it. It was back when I first was driving, and we had these open, huge fields you could drive in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that today. That is rare, if at all, where you could just, I mean, there was nothing to hit. There was nothing to wreck, you know? And I was out there, and you got a good feel of the car. And I mean, although I was out there, my dad didn't like it much. I was tearing up the fields, but you know, you got an opportunity to get out and do it. So today there's just not the opportunity to kind of have those safe environments to get out there in a big piece of metal and drive around without running into something as there used to be.
Well, it's true. And you know, if you think about the things that we did as young people, everybody listening in right now, that you would never want your kids to find out about, but nowadays, a young person, even if they do have access to a field or something like that, well, that video just went viral and they just got in trouble.
Yeah.
And so there's just not that same option to go out and learn and make mistakes on the fly but it's just changed. Everything's changed.
And it seems like every decision that we're asking them to make is more difficult and has more consequence if it's a bad decision.
Yes.
With there being more cars, and I've had to, I just try to tell I say this all the time. It's like, okay, I might be able to make up 7 minutes in the grand scheme of things.
Yes.
Drive 30 miles over the speed limit to make up 7 minutes, as opposed to, all right, I'm going to be 7 minutes late. But I also try to think about that might be a kid learning to drive. And
sure.
I remember one of the first times that I drove to Knoxville, I went to a UT football game, going up Cumberland on the Strip, up the hill, and the light right at the top of the hill, and I had a manual, and that was the first time I was faced with that steep of a hill and that kind of traffic. You can't roll backward in a UT game, and so I can just remember both feet trying to use my heel to keep, the clutch was in, my foot was on the gas, trying to keep my heel where when I let the clutch off, I could immediately have some gas, and those kind of things. The decisions today. If you were in the traffic is probably 10 times worse today than it was then.
It is, and our cars are, with so much technology in them, they're so much more expensive to repair.
Oh, Lord.
And so you're right about that. The fact that the financial implications of these mistakes is so much more prevalent. And so the young people, many of them know and many of them don't know that the level of responsibility that's required. But still today, just like it was back then, when a student goes to get their license, the DMV will look at the parent and say, are you willing to be financially responsible for anything this young person causes on the road? And I've been there in the DMV when this happens, and the parent will say yes, because they have to, and then they'll elbow the kid and say, now don't you make me regret this. And that question has gotten, to be almost like overlooked. People just don't think much about it. But the fact is, a young person could dramatically affect a family's well-being, financially or physically or whatever, because the cars are faster and quieter than ever before. You don't feel that speed. You don't think about it. And with our cell phones and traffic cameras and all that, there is record. Because when you think about the things that we did back in the day, we might have bumped something, or we might have gone over this or done that. There wasn't a record of that ever happened. Well, now with many technologies, all they can track where you went on your phone. They can track how fast you were going on at that particular time. They can determine if you were looking at the phone or not. If you did use the phone in that incident. And so the implications and tickets and things, it is different than it used to be.
If folks would like to find out more about Oak Ridge Driving School, how would they do that? How can they reach you? Online, telephone, how?
Sure. Our website is really simple. It's thedrivingcenter.org.
There you go.
It's very, very simple. Our phone number, 865-482-6700. And our email address is thedrivingcenteror@gmail.com. But our website's great. It answers most of the questions people might have about our services, about how to get in touch with us. But once again, my name's Matt. My wife Terry and I own the business, and I teach full time, and it's definitely a passion of ours to get out and do it. We have, we all do traffic school as well, and when people go in there, many times they're upset. I feel like they're going to throw rotten tomatoes at me when I'm up there teaching traffic school, and I'll tell them, hey, I care about you, and I promise you by the end of this class, I'm going to convince you to care about the person sitting next to you. Because we have to. We simply have to. If we don't, the traffic's only going to get worse.
Do you think we've taken this, and it is a privilege, it's not a right to drive, it's certainly a privilege to drive.
Yes, exactly.
Do you think that we've just taken it just for granted as almost like eating and sleeping? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like one of those things that you just do.
I think so many people take our freedoms in this country for granted.
Amen.
And all of the freedoms we have, whether it's freedom of speech, freedom of the religion, freedom to get out and drive, where we want to go at any time of the day. And I think when we were shut down in the pandemic and some of those freedoms were taken away, it was very, very hard on us and very, personal. And then many folks, were released out into the wild, a month later or whatever, and they never went back. They're like, I'm never going to relent. Yeah, I'm not going to relent to that again. But we do. We take our freedoms for granted. We take our military and our people that serve our country in all political offices and government offices. We take all those folks for granted. And that freedom of the vehicle, part of the problem with our driving is for many people, it's their only time of the day where they feel in control and they feel like they can kind of be themselves and then listen to the music and relax. Some people use it as a time to decompress.
I was just getting ready to say, there have been times that, I just want to just turn everything off. It's quiet. I've spent a day up here with noise and people, and I just turn everything off.
Sure.
I just drive,
Yeah. And you think about that, we should all feel like we can do that. However, when there's more traffic density in the Knoxville area than ever before.
Oh, I know.
And then suddenly we feel, like these folks shouldn't be here, or they're in my way, or I'm just trying to do my thing. And so when somebody comes and ruins your quiet time or whatever, people get reactionary. And so when I teach my traffic school or my driver education classes, I remind people, in my opinion, we're the most distracted society ever. We're the most emotional society ever. We're the most medicated society ever. We're the drowsiest society ever, and unfortunately, we're the most uneducated drivers in history.
And every bit of that leads to, sloppy driving.
Yeah,
it does.
It does, and but we do. I love the fact that I can own a vehicle and I can have a license, and I live in this beautiful East Tennessee where I can have vehicles and RVs or whatever I might have, that I can go out and do what I want to do, and things. And we do take it for granted. And Knoxville's such a great place. We're becoming a very populous area. People are moving here because they've learned how great it is.
Yeah.
And most of the folks here think the other people are the bad drivers. Many of those, 20 states require driver education still. Tennessee just happened to, it's not one of them.
Oh, really?
So I believe that we're probably more the problem than we realize. Because
are we getting close to it being a possible requirement, or is there a reason it's not a requirement?
I don't believe it will be because Tennessee, we're a state that believes in freedom. We like to let people do what they want to do, and so I can respect some of that. But like I grew up in Virginia, where you had to get your car inspected every year.
Yeah.
Everything had to be working, or you couldn't drive that vehicle. Tennessee, we like to, let people do their thing and let them be free. And I think that's a good thing. But at the end of the day, I think the insurance companies have to make that decision of, if someone's not going to take driver education, we need to make sure we help them understand that they should have. And that's why that discount is there for many companies. And I just don't know. I don't see a time when Tennessee is going to require it, but I think maybe there could be more encouragement for it.
Tell me, and I know you have to have these, there's got to be a statistical advantage to the people that take your class as opposed to people that don't. You take two 16-year-olds, one that dad taught to drive, one that dad taught to drive, and that took this additional training. What are the stats on that?
So the stats are difficult because nationally, statistics have shown that driver education programs in school systems were not as effective as they used to be, because many times they would just kind of throw anybody in there.
I can tell you many times I drove the car around there without the driver's ed teacher even in the car.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And so I think there are a lot of great programs out there, but statistically, the reality is when you're with a student in the car, I have no control about what they do from that point on. And you really try to impress upon them the dangers of the roads and how to be safe and all those things. And then they get comfortable. And then their parents encourage them, oh, it's okay if you go 10 over. Oh, you can go 5 over, and things like that. I believe that it's a family mentality. If I teach a student and I try to impress upon them or whatever, but then they go out the door and their parents and their friends don't believe in driver safety, they're just going to kind of they're going to end up falling into that trap, most likely.
If dad don't use his seatbelt, it's going to be drives, weaves through traffic, crazy kids are going to, okay.
Yeah, and so students today more than ever are impressed by their friends on who they're going to be than ever before. And so social media connections and so I believe if we could get more and more kids in driver education, we could impress upon our young generation about how important it is. I do believe we could shift that tide, but unfortunately, it's a personal decision. And so my job is, I take it very seriously. It's really trying to impress upon a life choice for these young people or the adults I teach about not following into the same pattern as their parents or their friends. Don't speed because you feel like you have to. Number one, leave early. Number one, leave early. And number two, follow further back. Those two things will change everybody's life. If everybody listening right now, if you will leave early, don't be in a habit of leaving on time or late. You'll drive much safer if you leave early.
Knowing that you're going to be okay.
Yeah, and enjoy the ride. Enjoy it. Leave early. Listen to your music. Listen to Merle FM, whatever. Listen to the radio. Enjoy yourself and let people out and not feel like you have to be on everybody's tail all the time. So follow further back and leave early are the two things I try to make sure everybody that I come in contact with that they hear.
Yeah, if you're in a 1970s Ford LTD and you have, you run it, you rear end somebody versus if you're in a 2024 something and rear end somebody, the impact to the person in the car is drastically different. But I was going to ask you, do we see a difference in driver fatality? Do we have more accidents that are fatal or near fatal as opposed to what we used to have? Because I would think even if we had fewer accidents because there are fewer cars, we had less safety in the car, so it might hurt us worse. But now I got greater safety, but way more people.
Yeah, so they're pumping more and more safety devices and into the cars, which is awesome. Fatalities in the car did dramatically start to decrease over the years. However, starting in around 2015, 2016, those started to creep back up because of the cell phone distractions and unfortunately speed kills. And our cars are made quieter than ever before, more comfortable than ever before. And if you can get out here and, especially if you're driving a hybrid, you can get out here going 70, you don't even feel it. And so even with the airbags and all those, the seatbelt only reduces your fatal injuries by 25%. I mean, I love seatbelts, but it only reduces those fatal crashes by 25%, reduces injuries by 50%. So we are seeing still our crashes are double what they are in the UK, because in the UK, they have professional driving schools. You have to take those professional driving schools in the UK. In Finland, you have to take private lessons in the summer and in the winter.
Oh, learn to drive on snow.
Yeah, but here, hey, I love America. Here in America, we really thrive on it. Everybody gets a car. Everybody gets a license. Everybody's buying gas and oil and tires and having little fender benders and needing to get things fixed. And so our economy really is built around that, and I don't see that changing. Like I said, I love that, but I do believe we can do better about releasing people out into the wild without any education.
Just seems like we'd have way more accidents and thankfully less fatalities from them, but with more people on it, more distractions, more everything, it just seems to me that we probably are having a whole lot more wrecks than we used to.
We do, and insurance agents are telling me, we have a record number of crashes every month, new record every month, and it's mostly rear-end collisions that cost now sometimes total a vehicle because it's so expensive to repair these cars. And so, right now, more than ever, I believe our folks are stretched with their money.
Yes.
And they're really trying to look for places to save their money. And that's part of the hard thing for me is I tell people, hey, this is an investment. It really is. It's an investment into your family's livelihood. But I do understand it's
kind of an intangible at first. You know what I mean? Because they don't see the savings. But when you call the insurance company and they give you the quote with and then without, then you can kind of sit and tally up how much it's going to take, how long it'll take to get your $450 back.
Yeah, absolutely.
But more than that, I don't know a parent or a grandparent that could not figure out a way to find some money or put it together to save if they knew, absolutely, if you take this, it's going to save your kid's life or it's going to save somebody's life.
Yes.
I think that we all would find a way or work very diligently to find a way to come up with that money. And it definitely, you stand a better chance of your child being safe with this class.
Yeah, one ticket, is a minimum of $150 for the most part, and then your insurance is going to go up, and next thing you know, you've already spent the $450.
And your court fees, and
well, nowadays one fender bender, just a little bit, you go to get a quote on just some paint and some touch up, it's going to be $600-700 for that little repair. So, all it takes is that little scrape and things, and the school parking lots themselves are some of the most difficult places on the face of the earth to drive. So, we also try to talk to the students about how to do that safely, park facing out, park away from folks for a while, but once again, getting there really early, leaving early, getting to school early, that way you can kind of prepare for the day, and then don't be ready just to rush out of the parking lot, when everybody else is trying to rush out of the parking lot. And so a lot of it's just decisions that
that's some advice we could all take in just everyday life.
Yes.
Leave a little early. Don't get upset. Take your time leaving. I sat in lines, and maybe because I did it so long going to UT games and stuff where you're stuck in that traffic. And I remember people be like, we're never going to get out of here. And I was like, look, it's a football game. This is how this stuff works.
Did you really think it wasn't going to be like
just relax, enjoy it. We won, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
But you're so impatient. People are impatient. I pick the kids up at school, and the kids, trying to push in when they're trying to get in line, get around. I'm just like, go ahead. I try, not always, but if we all could just take a little more time, a little more patience, a little more kindness, the whole world would be a lot better, not just the highways.
Yeah. And think about the reduction of potentially blood pressure, stress, anxiety.
Amen.
And also enjoying that. I love to drive.
Yeah, me too.
And I love to teach it. But, I don't love to drive as much as I used to sometimes.
I agree.
And I've learned my own personal struggles. When I'm going to the beach with my family, I'm at my worst. I feel like I got to get there fast.
Me too.
I have my family with me, so I'm kind of protective of their safety.
Yes.
And I just take everything personally. So I've learned that. So now I have to make sure that I have to remind myself throughout that 8-hour drive, let's back off a little bit, because I feel it. My blood starts to boil.
I get it.
And I'm human. And so we all have those moments, but we all say,
it gets me the two cars that are right like this and won't go. They run right together at 54 miles an hour as a 70 mile an hour speed limit. And everybody's behind them.
Well, and I don't want to forget this. The lane is the driving lane. The left lane is the passing lane. Most of us call it the fast lane.
Yes.
Please stay in the lane. Don't get over there in that left lane unless you're passing somebody. Once you pass them, get back into that right lane, and you'll definitely create less anxiety for everybody.
I think it's funny too, because I don't know why this is, but maybe it's just a man thing. Jim that used to work with me up here, he was the same way. You look at the GPS and it's like, it's 7 hours and 20 minutes. It's like, oh no, I can do this in 7. I can, and then for whatever reason, you feel like you have accomplishment. I drove my Corvette to the beach one time, and I went by myself, and I left here about 7 o'clock at night. So it's a 6-hour drive. So I drove when there was Wednesday night. So there was virtually no traffic. And I made a 6-hour drive in about 5 hours. I called and I was like, I made it in 5 hours. And it was like, how fast were you going? What's wrong with you? So it's, but you feel like you do.
Yeah.
I had nothing to rush for. It was at night. I was just going to get there and go to bed. But you feel like you want to, you're always in a hurry when you're doing that, trying to go somewhere.
Well, our time is valuable. All of us, our time is valuable. But also, if you ain't first, you're last. And so that mentality is tough. But like I said, I think most of the time when I'm driving, I feel like this is I'm in control and I enjoy it, and it's my time for me, and I'm listening to my music and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, if I get there in 5 hours instead of 7, okay, well, what risks did I take to make this happen? For 2 hours of gain, even if I only make up 15 minutes, many times I'm like, hey,
I am too. That's 15 minutes.
Hey, I gained 15 whole minutes to do what? And along the way, what kind of risks did I take with my finances and my future and other people's health and safety?
Do you teach that as part of the class, kind of the clear your head mentality,
Absolutely.
take a deep breath, and it's
driving is mostly mental. I mean, it really is. I play golf as well. Golf is mental.
Yes.
It's a mental game. If your mind's not right, the rest of it's going to be out the window. So you really have to mentally prepare yourself for it, especially when you start to know your personal struggles. If it's your daily commute to work, leave a little earlier. Practice compassion, letting people out. Try it, see how it goes. And then the definition of insanity was to continue doing that stressful same stuff every day and hating that commute every day and feeling like it's going to change, because there are more people moving here. We got more traffic density than ever before. So make a plan to be leaving early, following further back. I think you'll like it.
When we went down to get this car, we were in Marietta. And so we're north of Atlanta. You're not in Atlanta. You're close enough to know that you're not in Tennessee anymore. Yeah. And the guy at the car lot, he says, I'm moving quick, sir. I'm trying to get you out of here before traffic. I was like, okay. And, I knew. And so it took a little longer, and we decided we were going to grab something to eat. So we drove away from the interstate where we were going to go, and we turned into the restaurant. But by the time we started looking, Tracy's like, look at this traffic. She said, let's go back toward home first, because in just a matter of minutes, 440, 445, it went from being just a normal thoroughfare to being traffic as far as the eye could see. And then as we got out and started home, we were going about 35 miles an hour on the interstate. And lucky to keep moving.
Oh, sure.
Just lucky there wasn't a wreck.
Sure.
But it's just amazing at how much traffic there is. And when you drive through a city like that, it's almost now, it doesn't matter what time, it's still, it could be 12:30 at night. There's still a substantial amount of traffic on the road that used to, there just wasn't near that much.
No, and traffic professionals are constantly under stress of, well, why don't they add another lane? Why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? Well, studies have shown if you build it, they will come.
More cars, more lanes?
Yeah, if you widen the lanes, it just leads to more traffic in that area. And so most of us know our shortcuts, and we know these, I can take, Oak Ridge Highway or Clinton Highway to get to, I take Clinton Highway to get to downtown Knoxville now, personally.
Instead of Pellissippi?
I don't even like to try to take the chance that I-40 is going to be clear or Pellissippi, because it's just gotten so congested.
Yes.
And I enjoy
I-40 is, I drive it 4 times a week or 3 times. And when you get off Pellissippi going on 40, you're going to stop.
Yeah. And it doesn't even matter what time of day sometimes. And so, I've learned I like Clinton Highway. It might take me 5 extra minutes sometimes, but I kind of feel like I can prepare for it. I know that I leave 20 minutes early. I'm probably going to get there 20 minutes early as well.
Do you think it's a little safer, too, because you've got a number of red lights, a number of stops,
Yes.
It keeps you from getting that speed momentum?
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, there's more risk of running into somebody if you're not paying attention. But it seems like, it's easier to drive if you're Actually, let me back up. It seems like you're required to pay a little more attention when you're starting and stopping if you've got numerous red lights and stuff.
Yeah, it's really like driving a manual. When you're fully engaged in driving, you're going to be safer. And so when you're driving in areas where you have to be watching out for the other guy that might pull out from the side roads, but when you get on the highway, interstate highway, and it feels like you're just, you're almost in a robot. You're in a, highway hypnosis mode. You're just following the people ahead of you. That's a really dangerous. If you watch NASCAR, when do the big pileups occur? When everybody's in a pack.
Yeah, they're all right there. And one guy makes a mistake, and everybody else he makes it with him.
So people ask me, well, shouldn't I teach my kid, or shouldn't I drive the flow of traffic? And I'll say, no, drive the speed limit.
Yeah.
No matter what the other people are doing, because if you watch NASCAR, that's enough to teach you that if you get, no matter what that
speed is, in the flow,
if you get in that pack and you're too close to the person, you have no chance to get out of it. No matter how good of a driver you think you are, you have no chance. So I recommend staying back, driving the speed limit, and you'll have a much better chance of success and fewer tickets and all kinds of things.
If somebody'd like to sign up their child or adult or anybody for the services that you have, the classes that you have, how far out do they need to look? How often do you do it? And just give them a little information about that.
Yeah, our driver education classes are during fall break, winter break, spring break, summer break, but we do private lessons all the time.
Okay.
Typically, we're booked up about 1 week out. As far as private lessons, it's not too bad. I recommend people go ahead and plan several months in advance for driver education classes because, we make vacation plans and things like that. And so I would recommend go ahead and sign up today for our fall break classes. We have 2 of those, September 30th and October 7th. Or winter break class. Somebody might go ahead and sign up for winter break class. That way you can plan your life around it. Go ahead and make it a priority, that driver education at age 15, 16 especially. But even those 18 to 25-year-olds can definitely benefit from the class.
Is there anything involved in your classes, in your curriculum, that help drivers, not just kids, but help drivers deal with the anxiety or we call it road rage, how to maybe avoid that? Or, we all get mad. I've gotten cut off and whatever. And
yes.
It's like, I've got a big truck out there. It's like, I'll run you over.
Yes.
I've got
and those trucks seem like they get bigger all the time.
Exactly.
And I think there's a lot of mental aspect to that because, we know how bad it is. And, I have parents ask me all the time, shouldn't I get my kid a bigger vehicle?
Well, I was just sitting here thinking, I'm going to get mine stick shifts.
Yeah.
Watch this.
Yes, please. And I'll happy to teach them in the automatic, and then it's easier to learn them that stick shift once they learn the rules and how to do things. But the anxiety is at an all-time high, and it's the same way. The way that we teach reduction of that anxiety is leaving early, staying back, knowing the rules of the road, that confidence of knowing I know the rules, I know what to do, I know when that green light's green, I can go straight, but I can't go left automatically without that arrow. And what's a yellow flashing arrow? And just some of those things. The education can really help with that anxiety. Learning to drive the speed limit and staying back from people can really help with anxiety. Having someone like myself or one of my other instructors teaching without yelling at them or making them feel like they're behind. Maybe they're 20 and they're not driving yet. We want them to make sure, hey, you've got value, but all these people around you got value too. We're going to be respectful and careful and all those things. So that really helps reduce anxiety. But I also tell them, hey, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's going to be things that are going to happen. People are going to U-turn right in front of you to go to that new tropical smoothie. They're going to turn right in front of you. That happened to us this weekend. Somebody U-turned on Illinois Avenue right in front of us. And, I was like, hey, how do we respond? Okay, and I'm really glad it happened when I'm teaching. Because I can talk about it.
Yeah.
And I'll say, hey, but these are the things I can't make happen. I can't create these scenarios out there for you. So, they just need more and more practice. The number of young people that I teach who've only driven 2 or 3 hours and families are already saying, go. They were going to go ahead and take them and get their license. And I'd say the state requires they do 50 hours of practice before they get their license, but there's no check and balance of that.
There is at my house.
Yeah, good.
Tracy's been going, we need to drive at least 6 more hours before you're ready to do this.
Yes,
Tracy's been working with Demi very diligently, getting her ready.
And that's just a testament to you guys and your parenting and with her. But not everybody sees it that way, and that's the problem is that you and I are driving in traffic next to these people who passed a test online, and there is no check about how many hours they did. The vehicle they're driving is not inspected annually. Many of them don't even know how to put the gas in the car, so they drive it till it runs out, then they figure it out. But we teach them all those things: how to put gas in the car, how to do that safely, and how to pull out taking a right or a left out of a side street. If somebody doesn't take them through all these, how a roundabout works and the unprotected left, and how to merge onto the highway, how to let other people merge on the highway next to you.
Yeah.
And we take them through all those scenarios. But at the end of the day, every one of these things is a personal choice, and we help them to understand that choice. They can choose to listen and obey and do great with me, and then they can throw it all out the window when they get that license, when they get out there with their friends in the car with them and stuff like that. So, we help them to realize, this is his personal choice that you're making.
I think it sticks.
I do believe it does.
I even if we don't adhere to it or they don't adhere to it all the time, I think that, you can't learn too much. It can't hurt ever for a child, anybody that's a little trepidation about driving, to do that. Because I mean, I'm the world's worst now about retaining stuff. I forget it all the time, or but at the end of the day, when the rubber meets the road, that kicks back in once you've learned it. If you did indeed learn it, you'll come back to it.
Well, and train them up is the way they would go, and they'll return to it. And so if you start off with the right education and the right mentality, you can only hope and pray that they stay with it and that they'll return back to it. Maybe they get a little fast in their young days, brave. Their friends will say, "Hey, if there's nobody looking, you can go. It's late, let's go." They can have that confidence to say, I'm not going to do that. You know why? And I can give them 10 reasons. They can spout them off, tickets and things. And
you're a braver man than I am, sir. I'm just going to tell you. I don't know who got up this one morning and said, "You know what? I want to jump in the car with unexperienced drivers and get out in I-40 traffic." But more power to you.
I've been called crazy a lot, but I really do enjoy it. I just feel like it's a spiritual gift that I have, being very patient and understanding with these young people who do have highest level of anxiety we've ever seen.
Sure.
The number of young people on medication for anxiety is so high, and we let them know, hey, you're valuable. We care about you. We want you to be safe out here. And I'll just tell them straight up, you shouldn't be driving, or yes, you can, but we've got to get over some of these things.
When you tell somebody you shouldn't be driving, do you then say, and here's why, and here's what we need to do or you need to do to fix it? Do you give them that?
Absolutely. I'll tell them we've got to come up with a plan right now. This young person, maybe, for example, is not ready to even drive with the parent without that brake there. There's just too much panic and things. So I do have to have those hard conversations. We also do medical driving assessments, and occasionally somebody will bring us maybe someone in their 70s, 80s, 90s whose license has been taken by the doctor. And so they can come and do an assessment with me. And there's times that I have to say, I'm sorry, this person should not continue to drive. Many times those drivers do a great job on the road, but they don't know some of the rules. They've been driving.
I'm probably that. I probably could drive you anywhere you want to go, but I probably don't know all of the meticulous rules.
Yeah, and when sometimes it's not a huge problem, but other times, you might drive with someone who speeds right past a school bus stop to pick up kids because they've not experienced that in their small town where they're at. So I've had that happen to me before. And so it's, we just try to be honest with folks, but also understand, hey, we're in danger out here. There's ways to reduce it, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it with a young person or an adult. This is the most dangerous thing you'll do on a regular basis.
You know what I see on a pretty regular basis is people that don't understand the four-way stop sign.
Yes.
Who goes when? Who got there first? It's like, so either, nope, you go. No, you go. You go. Wait, am I going to go?
Yes.
I see that all the time.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a problem. And if everybody ties, okay, well then the rules get thrown out. So. We go over that so much. Okay, we go. Rotates to the right.
Yes.
And, okay, you can flash your headlights to communicate with people and things like that. I actually taught a guy who built the fastest computer in India as a 7-year-old.
What?
And just a genius. He taught himself how to be a CPA. He's Cisco certified. Just a really smart guy. Well, I was teaching him how to drive. He tried to teach him how to drive on a video game. And he thought, well, I need some real lessons. I was teaching him how to drive, and I noticed he was flashing his headlights at everybody all day long. And I said, what are you doing that for? He said, well, I figured this is how I'm going to slow everybody down. They all think there's a policeman
over there.
And I said, well, buddy, that's a pretty smart thing to do. But I said, you shouldn't be doing that. I said, you're flashing your lights thinking there's an emergency back there. But I said, it is a way to communicate. But I thought, wow, what an ingenious way to slow the entire road down. But
well, it works. If I'm driving down the road, somebody flashes lights, I'm like, I check my speed. That's what I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for coming on with us today. The telephone number if folks want to get a hold of you, 865-482-6700.
Yes, sir.
OakRidgeDrivingCenter.org.
Yeah, it's the Driving Center.
Driving Center.
TheDrivingCenter.org. Yeah.
TheDrivingCenter.org.
Yeah.
And we'll have it. If folks need that, we'll have the information and the number up here as we're going to be doing some business together. And I appreciate that, too, by the way.
Ron, thank you. Yes.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. I think I enjoy talking about it for whatever reason. I've always enjoyed driving. I've driven across I drove from La Follette, Tennessee to Phoenix, Arizona when I was 19 or 20 years old when I moved out there. And I'll never forget, I drove through Dallas, Texas. It was about 9 o'clock at night when I hit Dallas. And I'd never seen that many cars. Even going through Atlanta, I'd never seen that many cars out at that time of night. It was, I thought, man, I can remember that very vividly, traveling, I don't know, 40, 50, maybe 30 miles an hour in that kind of traffic and how much there was out there. But I've always loved driving. I enjoy it. Yeah. I enjoy seeing different stuff. And like you said, it kind of gives you a sense of being in control.
And what a great story and life story to tell. And I tell these young people these kind of stories all the time. And I'm like, man, it hurts me that you guys don't want to drive or that you don't love it. But it is a different time now.
It was the rite of passage.
Yes.
It was the ultimate, I'm out on my own. But you're right. They just experienced so much of what we needed a car to experience. They can experience pushing their button, talking to their friends, or
they can call an Uber, go to the airport, fly to Arizona, Uber to the hotel, they have driverless taxis down there in Phoenix now where you don't even have a driver in the car, and life has changed. But in order to be able to live your life comfortably here in Tennessee and many places, that license is definitely part of it.
I got to go to New York City for New Year's. Tracy and I went this year, which was amazing. And so I was ready when we flew in. I think we flew into LaGuardia. I was ready for just, basically I thought, well, I could probably walk faster to get but it was amazing. The traffic, it was congested.
Sure.
But it was no more congested than the stuff that we have today.
It really isn't. Yeah.
Going home, when we had to go back to the plane, it took a little longer. We had to make a few detours, and we drove into the city deeper than where we had been. But I was just amazed at the amount of traffic that we have here. I was ready for that to be super congested, and it was. But again, they were moving 20 miles an hour downtown New York. We were moving 20 miles an hour on I-40 in Knoxville.
Yeah, and Knoxville is really its third fastest growing city in the country.
Really?
Yes, and so it's a great place. And, people are posting on, the Smokies, how great they are and how great Tennessee Vols are and all these other things. And people found out about it. It's not a secret anymore.
No.
And so we all need to be aware of that. And I think I love a lot of our new residents, and many of them come with different driving styles and different abilities. But they're in this boat with us, and so we all have to respect.
Do you partner with like DOE, DOD, all these other places to say, hey, if you all get people in here from other countries or where they drive on the wrong side of the road?
Yes.
Do they know about you?
Yes, but we're always still trying to educate folks that we're there.
Yeah.
But I teach at least 40 or 50 or so folks annually who are coming to work at Oak Ridge National Lab or at University of Tennessee. I have a new young person who's a student at UT who's from Africa.
That's cool.
And so I really thoroughly enjoy that.
I bet that's cool getting to meet a lot of different. You're in the car too, so you're teaching, but also it's a personal space, so you probably get to know people.
Oh yeah, and they teach me too. I've learned some Ukrainian and some Arabic, and I've learned some South African Zulu and all kinds of things. I mean, it's been a blast. I really enjoy it.
Well, you seem cut out for it. Yeah, I mean, seriously,
appreciate it.
You've picked the right thing to do. So that's cool. Well, thank you so very much for coming in today.
Yep.
Been an interesting conversation, and obviously the work that you do is good and it's needed. And I was doing business with you before you ever advertised here, so
we appreciate that.
All right, Tracy paid for all that with them, and she's like, I'm going to do this for her. I'm going to get her this driving kit, courses, and mostly to. Our kids are responsible, but I found they react to a mistake. They take that so much harder. That when I made a mistake really when I was a kid, it was kind of like, so you know what I mean? You just kind of bounced off and went on. But today it's like, I think you're right. Social media, if somebody else saw it and they're going to make fun of it, they're way more scrutinized.
Yeah, when you think about schools and how we were punished and
Yeah.
how things were dealt with or whatever, and the community really would step up and speak up too.
Yeah.
And now people are very careful about calling out the neighbor's kid or it's just a very different time. And so, a lot of these kids haven't been told no before.
True.
That as well. And so my job is to, tell them no, but also, laugh about it and tell them, hey, we're going to make these mistakes. I'm in charge of the car. Anything goes wrong, it's my fault. Anything goes wrong, it's my fault. And so we,
Do you teach car maintenance? I hate to keep interrupting you, but I keep. Do you teach them? Hey, here's what you do to maintain it.
We talk about stuff of that in the car in the classroom, but we have to spend so much time on other topics.
Yeah.
But we do talk about routine maintenance and what to do, what not to do, and nowadays there's so many great services out there. People we partner with that will come in and even show some of those things in the class, or we bring a police officer in from Oak Ridge City who will come in and talk about what to do, what not to do if you get pulled over. And there's a lot of aspects that go into driver education. But so many of us now, do we even know where our spare tire is and our stuff on these new cars? Many of them don't even have a spare tire.
Good question. I don't know. I think mine's under the carriage. It's SUV, so I think it's housed under there.
Most of these new cars don't have spare tires. They have a chart, and they have a little battery pack you can try to jump your car with, or they may have a little spray for the tire. They don't actually have a spare. So a lot of times, even us experienced folks don't even know how our cars work.
Thank you very much for coming in, and
Ron,
good luck with what you do, and thank you for doing business with us. And you'll have Demi now. About a year and a half, 2 years, you'll have James, David, and Jacob, the twins. You might have them both at the same time, which would be a hoot.
Well, my twins are 23. I taught them, and I actually taught a set of quadruplets out of Anderson County, and they all wanted to ride together. I was like, well, we'll split you in pairs. But yeah, happy to do it. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you very much, Matt Reedy. Let me give you again the telephone number, 865-482-6700. thedrivingcenter.org.
Yes, sir.
Make sure I got it right that time. And then again, if you didn't catch that and you need it, you can call us here, 457-1380, and we'll get you fixed up. Thanks a bushel.
Thanks, Ron.
Have a good day.
You too.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap things up. Y'all enjoy your day.
You never know when life is going to throw you a curveball. Say you're involved in a traffic accident and you need some legal advice. Maybe you're released from your job for no reason. Or you suspect it's because you're getting older. You might know of someone whose marriage is on the rocks. Divorce is soon. Bad things happen to good people all the time. And Saturday mornings from 11 until noon, T. Scott Jones will be taking your calls and giving you legal advice. That's 11 until noon Saturday mornings, right here on WYSH.
Shylock's Pawn in Clinton has some exciting news.